Speaking of cartoonishly evil to a degree I can't even imagine, folks, I found that apparently Russell Brand is just completely capitulating, just completely going mask off. Russell Brand is a Republican. He used to be one of those just kind of centrist guys who just wanted to smoke weed and, like, I don't know, practice New Age medicine. But now he's just full on conservative. And anyway, here's his 15-minute long interview with Ron DeSantis.
Hello there, you Awakening Wonders. Thanks for joining me today for Stay Free with Russell Brand. It's a very special episode because Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida and presidential candidate, is joining us. We're going to talk to Ron for 15 minutes on YouTube if you're watching us there. Then we'll be exclusively on Rumble.
My dip ass thought he was a lefty. Nope, he is not. He is not, and we are going to see that within the next 15 minutes. Can he even spell Republican? Maybe when he's sober.
Talk about Trump, CBDCs, war in Ukraine, anti-riot stroke anti-protest laws and what that distinction means. In our item, Here's the News, we're going to be talking about Biden's temper. Is he a toddler or is he a lethal lunatic? Let us know in the comments where you stand on that particular issue. And is even this new revelation that Biden behaves extraordinarily in public, this is an allegation, it's not been proven, is that potentially PR to make him sound a little more edgy, a little more priapic than he otherwise may, and a little less docile? But
yeah, you forgot he existed, but you know what? The internet didn't, because he has 6.5 million subscribers on YouTube. I think it is telling just how unpopular Ron DeSantis is, though, that this video only has 70,000 views. This video has 70,000 views, and on a channel with 6.5 million people. Goodness.
Now, the reason that you've joined us, I'm sure, is because we have the great privilege of welcoming the governor of Florida and Republican presidential candidate for 2024, Ron DeSantis. And I've got a copy of The Courage to Be Free, Ron DeSantis' book, in my hand now to endorse it by proximity and contact. Ron, thank you so much for joining us on Stay Free with Russell Brand.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for plugging the book. Not everyone does that. I didn't even ask you to do it, so appreciate it.
We're very professional here, and we're very grateful to have you on the show. Thanks for...
Ron DeSantis has negative riz, guys. Like, he's trying to smile right now. He looks uncomfortable as hell to be on camera. Bro, why are you even running to be president?
Joining us. Thanks for supporting and endorsing Rumble, which of course has its home in the state that you are the governor of.
Look, he's trying to smile, but he's like grimacing the entire time. That wasn't just, this isn't just like a bad frame. Like, look, it's his like expression for like the last 5 seconds.
Rumble, which of course has its home in the state that you are the governor of. Ron, when I was in Florida recently, I was struck by the amount of...
He's not moving his face muscles at all, dude. Oh man, he's so bad at this. You know, again, I know that people were saying for a while now that, like, oh, Ron DeSantis is really scary, you know, like, oh man, he has a real shot at winning. I told you guys, from the second he announced, man has negative charisma. He's the anti-Rizzler, all right? Say what you want about Donald Trump. Donald Trump actually has, like, a charisma that's kind of magnetic, especially for his supporters. Ron DeSantis has whatever the opposite of that is. He has absolutely get me out of here energy that radiates it off of him at all times. Look, I know how to smile, guys. It just seems to me that he's scary from like a policy perspective because he's effective at implementing policy, even as we've seen, if it's as insane as, you know, making the roads out of nuclear waste that is still radioactive. But, you know, he's good at implementing that stuff. He's really bad at any of the other parts that would take him to the presidency, thankfully.
of pride that Floridians have in their state. You appear to be universally endorsed by the population of Florida. I did stand-up comedy there. A lot of my stand-up was talking about measures taken in the pandemic where I live in the UK, and the broad and I would say spookily ubiquitous response to the pandemic in most places in the world, except, one might contest, in Florida. I'm sure that the sense of state pride that Floridians have is a source of great joy to you. I wonder how you came to the position of...
Oh my God, chat. Oh my God. Ron DeSantis, he's doing the ooh-woo fingers. He's doing the political ooh-woo. He's ooh-wooing. Oh, thank you for saying such nice things about me, Mr. Russell. I mean, Mr. Brand. Hee-hee.
Confidence in taking a stance that was antithetical to the stance taken elsewhere in America.
Well, I'm glad you noticed that. I was born and raised in Florida, and while I've always loved the state, we didn't have the same type of pride growing up that, say, people in Texas have about Texas. And yet in the last few years, particularly since I've been governor, we've developed that pride. And I think a lot of it's rooted in the fact that we told people like Fauci to take a hike during COVID. We were going to do it our way. We were going to be the free state of Florida. And obviously that meant people had a right to work, right to operate businesses. Kids needed to be in school. We fought back against mandates, both in terms of not letting local governments impose mask mandates, not letting government or business impose COVID vaccine mandates. So in every step of the way, we were really leading. And how did I come to it? I mean, part of it was I just looked at the data that was coming in. The whole premise of lockdown, both in the UK and in the United States, was in the idea that COVID would cause massive amounts of hospitalizations and we wouldn't even have any.
Just as an FYI, 1 out of every 216 Floridians died of COVID. Just as an FYI. Which is a lot. That is a lot. That is so many people. Holy shit.
Any more hospital beds left over for normal patients. We all got those models, all governors, all heads of state. And I'm looking at this in like March and April, and none of it was accurate. All the predictions were bogus. And so I said, listen, this is something that we're going to have to live with. Sweden is living with it, and they're doing much better than most of these other countries in Europe.
Sweden had like one of the highest death tolls per capita in Europe. Wait, Sweden, COVID deaths. Do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Let's see. Deaths per capita. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Well, this is not a very useful thing. Okay. Man, it is really difficult to see. Yeah, out of 47 European countries, Sweden places 30th. Goodness gracious. Yeah, just, the COVID-19 associated mortality rates per 100,000 people during the first wave of the pandemic were 0.3 in Norway and 2.9 in Sweden. So you can kind of see the massive difference. Literally, their lack of lockdowns led to, what, 9... like almost 10 times as many deaths. Like, yeah, it's not. That's not great.
Europe. Let's have people make their own decisions rather than forcing Fauci as a
Hey, Ron DeSantis, which would you rather have? A D-Day that kills however many people it killed in our world, or a D-Day that kills I don't know, 10 times more people? Which would be worse, do you think? I'm just curious. I don't know. I'm just asking questions, okay?
on our state, and I think that the goal of Fauci was to have rolling lockdowns. So you'd lock down, then COVID would go down, then you could maybe open back up. But when the next wave started, you would have to lock down again. And I think they would have wanted to repeat that over and over again. Had Florida not stood in the way, I think they would have gotten away with it. But what happened was we said,
oh, yeah, you stood up to Dr. Fauci and thwarted his evil plan. Uh-huh. You helped foil their plan, didn't you, Ron? I wonder how much dog whistling is going to be around them in this video.
We're standing for freedom. We remember we had a COVID wave summer of 2020. Everyone was telling me you've got to lock down Florida. Fauci was saying it, the White House, the press, the left, all these people. And I said, no. I said, I'm going to stand. A lot of people said your political career is over. And, at the end of the day, so be it, right? A leader's got to do what he thinks is right. You got to stand up for your folks, protect their job.
Ron, they're not electing you in Florida again. And it doesn't look like you're going to get the presidency. So I very much look forward to never hearing about you again, because you're a lobbyist for, like, I don't know, giving cancer to babies.
Instead of worrying about your own political hide. And so that's what we did. It made the state better, and that did. But I do think it had an impact around the country, because anytime the lockdowners wanted to do more restrictions, people could just point to Florida and say, well, wait a minute, Florida's not doing this. Why don't we have to do it? So we were glad to be able to take that stand. But here's the thing. You still have people today, Fauci and the like, they think that what they did was right. They think that these lockdowns worked. And so my fear is, if this happens in the future, a lot of these people are going to want to do the same thing again. So one of the things I pledged as president, and I think I'm the only one running on the Republican side who will be willing to do this, we're going to bring a reckoning to this health bureaucracy and this medical swamp, because these agencies like CDC, NIH, FDA, they failed the American people.
Yeah. Those medical agencies are the ones failing the American people, definitely not the companies that make our drugs and then price gouge us to death. It's definitely the medical organizations that make sure that the drugs are safe, and that, there's medical oversight, and, public policy decisions are made with informed, information, from, like, medical experts. Yeah, those are the real problems with American healthcare. Yep, you nailed it, bud.
Become corrupted, and they did a lot of damage with these unscientific anti-freedom policies.
Well, that's pretty heartening.
Yeah, the FDA, the organization that makes sure companies can't sell you snake oil and call it medicine. Oh man, yeah, they're really sticking it to you, man. They're really getting you. Bring back. I demand that we follow Ron DeSantis's wishes and go back to the days where a wandering man with a donkey and a cart could sell you a bottle of some interesting smelling liquid, and you would just be able to go on your merry way believing it would cure your syphilis. Okay, I demand that those days come back. Okay, the wholesomeness I found when imbibing a concoction made by, like, some drifter who faked a medical license. I loved those days. They were the best.
To hear. In retrospect, your stance increasingly seems to have been the correct one, and that's interesting and exciting, in fact, to hear you talk about a reckoning. One thing that is evident from the position that you took as governor of Florida, that decentralization and the ability that you had to take that position, which must have felt like a huge risk, given that it was in opposition to the proposed mandate in elsewhere, the sacking of key workers in New York City, the
Bring back cocaine to Coca-Cola. It's in the name already, folks.
advocacy for shaming by CNN of people that were hesitant or reluctant to pursue certain medical propositions. It's a risk that has doubtlessly paid off, but also it helps us to identify the importance of decentralization. With this in mind, how do you feel that you would preside over the United States of America if you fundamentally believe in the rights of individual states to establish their own laws and govern in their own way?
Well, there is way too much authority.
States' rights to do what, Russell? States' rights to do what exactly? Interesting talking point you chose for this question. Let's hear the answer.
In Washington, D.C. and in the federal government right now. And a lot of that is, I'd say, illegitimate authority that has been accumulated over many, many decades. Some of that is because Congress has been neglectful, presidents have been neglectful, but you have a massive bureaucratic administrative state that exists almost outside of typical elections. They exert power over the
Yeah. They exist under the purview of federal elections, Ron. You elect representatives. We have a representative democracy, Ron. You elect your representatives on the federal level, and then they advocate for you. That's how this works. That's how all of this works.
Populace, regardless of the outcome elections, none of these people are elected, and they purport to tell us what kind of energy.
You're right. They're not elected, Ron. They're appointed by elected representatives. They're appointed by the people you elect. God damn it. These people aren't elected. Yeah, they're not. They're appointed by the people you elect. That's how this works.
We can use, what kind of car we can drive, even whether potentially you're allowed to have a gas stove. You know, in Florida, we made gas stoves tax-free because we...
Finally, now in Florida, you can breathe in carcinogenic gases tax-free. The dream. Oh, God, I, too, love to just inhale that sweet, sweet, cancerous gas.
Believe that you should have the ability to do all that. So part of the project, I think...
Yeah, the Kama Sutra scholar. Yeah, no, they literally mean it. You can pull the gas stove from their cold, dead hands. And you know what? We have, like, guys, after looking into, what is it, what's it called? Is it the, conductive stove? Induction stoves. Induction stoves are so much cooler! They're so much cooler, chat! Oh, hey, White Crone. Induction stoves are cool! They cook things with magnets! You can literally, if one is on, you can literally just slap your hand on the burner and nothing will happen because your hand isn't reactive to the magnetism. And then you just put a pot that is reactive to the magnetism and it just heats up almost instantly. It's great. They're so cool. Yeah, it's like how you would cook if you were fucking Magneto. Exactly, VCC TV. Does he have any policy that isn't spite-based? The policies that... No, honestly, no. No, I reached into my mental thought bag and couldn't find anything.
Take power out of Washington and send it back to the states, the localities, and individuals. That means we need a radical reduction of the federal bureaucracy. We're going to tell our cabinet secretaries that they have to reduce the number of employees that they have inside D.C. By 50%. And that's going to probably be the biggest reduction in power in Washington in modern American history. But we cannot go down the road of letting more and more power consolidate in Washington, D.C. Part of the reason is the founders never wanted to have consolidated power like that because they understood that's a threat to freedom. You also have another problem that the ruling class in D.C., they get almost every major issue wrong. And so these are the last people you would want to surrender judgment and freedom to. They're going to lead us down the road to ruin. So we've got a lot of work to do. But at the end of the day, part of the reason we've been successful in Florida is we fought back against the federal government. And for example, when the federal government tried to impose the COVID-19 vax mandates.
Or, for example, when the federal government tried to abolish slavery, Florida bravely fought along.
On the economy, you had one through the main economy, which we fought back and won. Then they did one on the medical personnel, nurses, who a lot of these nurses had COVID. They didn't want to take the vax. And so we called a special session of the legislature. We said, you don't have to do it in Florida. Federal government said, well, we're telling you have to. And we said, go pound sand. We're not going to cooperate. So the federal government fined us $2 million. But you know what? We saved the jobs of tens of thousands of people throughout our state. And so there's a lot you can do when you just stand up to these people to do what's right. But there's no question that there's too much power in Washington, D.C.
Presumably, this process of devolving power and breaking down centralized bureaucratic power in Washington, if undertaken in good faith...
Oh, shit, guys. Oh, shit. That's it. Sam L. Crow over in YouTube chat gets it. We're all forgetting that the COVID shot gave us magnet powers. Okay? He's trying to protect Floridians from the evils of our dastardly magnet powers. Oh my god, it all makes sense. All the pieces are coming together. Oh my god. Russell is such a nut job. Russell isn't a nut job. He's just a conspiracy brain. You know, this is why I've talked a little bit about, recently in particular, about how conspiracism, even if it appears to be left-wing conspiracism, always seems to hook back around to conservative ideas. It's why you can see people going down the conspiracy rabbit hole, and like a year or two later, they'll be like raving right-wing lunatics, you know? And I think this is fundamentally like what happened with like Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan did a lot of this stuff. I think he started out relatively normal, maybe left-leaning centrist, maybe just a right-leaning centrist who wanted to smoke weed. But I think the conspiracy brain is powerful and alluring, and I think that it will twist you and break you. Conspiracy, what are you talking about? The vaccinations were 100% effective, or wait, the media said 80%, or wait, the media said 60%, or wait, and then how can people be so stupid not to realize when they're being lied to? There's money to be made and stupid people are being taken advantage of here. So here's the thing. There are two distinct problems. Posada bot banned you, but I'm going to answer your statement anyway, in good faith. So hopefully if you're still watching, you know, you can put in an unban request if you'd like. But I'm going to answer your question, right? So when people are talking about the issues of like, oh, well, the pharmaceutical industry and, you know, the medical industry wants to make money, that's true. There are perverse incentives at play because of the capitalist system we live in. However, it is also true that vaccines are one of the most effective ways to deal with illnesses, right? We effectively eliminated smallpox from the world because of vaccines. We effectively eliminated polio from the world because of vaccines. And you know what? Polio and smallpox, those vaccines weren't 100% effective either. No vaccine is 100% effective. Especially if those vaccines are against illnesses that have a very high degree of evolution. If those illnesses are being spread very far and wide, and multiplying and creating new strains of itself, well, then those new strains aren't going to be as affected by vaccinations as the old one that the vaccine was designed to combat. So part of the problem is with COVID, it has spread so far, so quickly, that there are numerous different strains. It's a very similar problem to why you have to get a flu shot every year, because there are numerous different strains of the flu. So again, no vaccine is 100% effective. However, if everyone did get vaccinated, it would severely cut down on the rate of transmission, and it would severely curtail the amount of hospitalization, and severely cut down on the number of people who are dying, as well as then open up the possibility to refine future vaccines and open up the possibility of possibly eliminating that illness entirely. If more people get vaccinated, it cuts down on the viable amount of strains that can circulate within society. That's to answer your question. Now, the reason why the media changed what it was saying is, one, because they really wanted to get people vaccinated at the beginning. Two, they didn't have a ton of clinical trials to show how effective exactly it was at the beginning, because it was developed, through Operation Warp Speed and cut a lot of corners in order to get it out into the general public as fast as possible. And three, over time, the effectiveness of the vaccine changes based on which strains are circulating around society. That's the gist of it. So it's not a conspiracy that these vaccines weren't as effective as first touted. The flu vaccine that they created 3 years ago for just the general flu, that's not as effective anymore either. There's a reason why you don't get that particular vaccination anymore. It's because they had to make a new one for all of the new flu strains. And every year they have to make an educated guess about which flu strains are going to be kind of the ones that rise to the top during flu season. So that there you go. That's the answer to your question. And the solution to your other problem that you're citing about capitalist and perverse incentives, the solution to that is to publicly fund drug creation, and take that out of the hands of pharmaceutical companies and cut down on the number of patents that are issued for medications and such, because that in turn creates a perverse incentive to elongate medical intervention. So instead of getting a some kind of shot that can cure your illness in a couple weeks, instead you have take 2 of these every day, and that will alleviate your symptoms but not cure you entirely. There are instances of that happening, but this is not that. The thing you are linking to that problem is just part of what's inherent in creating vaccines, and that part is not a conspiracy. So this is why I say the conspiracy brain can infect you and bring you to an incredibly far-right conclusion that medicine is ineffective and all doctors are lying to you. Also, it's a bot. You were banned by a bot that flagged you in other chats for copy pasting messages and being a butt elsewhere. Sorry. I told you you could put in an unban request, but you can also be an asshole. You have the right to be an asshole if you want to. There you go. You're so pretty. Well, if I'm so pretty, like the stream, hit the like button on the channel, and consider dropping some subs or donos over on riverboat.gg. Your compliment has backfired, and now I have checkmated you into gifting subs. Anyway, moving on. Let's finish this. There's 6 minutes left of this. I know it's felt like an eternity, but yeah.
Would mean in states like California and New York State, you would get different cultural and ideological inflections, certainly from based on our current reading from the type of cultural values that are espoused and somewhat represented and in fact embodied by you, Ron. And I wonder if this process is undertaken in good faith, how will that affect the culture war, an issue that you've been most outspoken on, if you genuinely are devolving power in the manner that you have described? That's the first part of my question that I may offer you, because presumably California would have a whole different set of values, different policies on green issues, for example.
Different policies on whether people are property or not. Very, very good, very big brain here, Russell.
Different policies on homelessness, and many of the topics loosely corralled under, let's say, wokeness and the anti-woke discourse that's been dominating political and culture more broadly for a while. And the second part of my question is, are you willing to approach and rebut centralized...
Oh, thank you, guys.
Sidestep this. Asterisk.
Very knifey duck. Thank you for gifting a sub to Eternize. Specifically, your mic output, the video volume is good. Part of the problem is if I turn up my mic sensitivity much more, you guys are going to start hearing the air conditioning vent, which is right there. So I try not to turn up the sensitivity too much, but that's just kind of how it has to be. Okay, I've tried so hard to accommodate the audio issues, but I can talk a little bit closer to the mic if that will help. Yeah.
Power in its corporate and private form in the same way that you would confront it in the state form. I'm talking, of course, of giant monopolies and duopolies in the areas of big tech and even energy and media. Because, of course, one of the arguments that is advanced that is for pro-state power is that it gives us the ability to confront corporate power, even if that isn't happening anywhere in American politics at the moment.
Well, no, I mean, I think it's a great issue, but I actually think it's just the opposite. I think what you've seen is a collusion between big government and big business. I mean, just take big tech. A lot of the things that were being censored during COVID, for example, that wasn't just being done because Mark Zuckerberg thought that he wanted it censored. No, he was working with people like Fauci. They were working with people inside of government to censor dissent on lockdowns, on mask mandates, on school closures, on vax mandates, all these things that, I mean, if you think about it, a free society has to have debates over important issues. What more important issue have we had in the last decade or two than whether society should be locked down? I mean, are you kidding me? And they didn't want to have that debate. So I actually think that, yes,
Sophie.
Obviously, when there's less power in Washington,
Also,
individual states, they have certain powers to make different decisions. But I do think if we break up the relationship between big government and some of these big monopolies, particularly in the tech sphere, I think that's actually going to have universal benefit throughout the country. Because
I love, by the way, how they speak in like such vague platitudes. That like, oh yeah, we need to break up big tech. Okay, how? How do you want to do that? I don't know. We'll just break them up somehow. I don't know.
There's going to be more ability to speak freely. You're not going to have Uncle Sam with its thumb on the scale. And let's just be clear about this. The federal government could not censor you and say you can't say something about, say, lockdowns. That would violate the First Amendment. Everybody knows that. but they can't subcontract out that to a private entity and have the private entity do what the federal government couldn't do directly. It's still a violation of the First Amendment. One of the things we did in Florida as governor, I signed legislation expressly prohibiting.
You know what? I believe so, Avalon of Babylon, but I don't actually know. Fauci, Jewish. I don't know if he's Jewish. Do 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 do. Okay, he's not Jewish. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Yeah. Nope. But they do talk about him in the same way that they do about them, you know?
Our state and local government employees from colluding with big tech for any type of speech censorship or to police, quote, misinformation or disinformation. They are not allowed to do that as a matter of law. As president, I'll issue an executive order basically barring federal employees from colluding with big tech like we've seen in the past. But I think this whole idea of freedom in our society has got to be viewed through the lens of, yes, we know big government it can be bad for freedom. There's no question about it. But we live in an era where a lot of these big private concentrations of power are exercising.
Yeah, I'm sure Republicans are against big private concentrations of power. Uh-huh. Yeah, Republicans definitely against that. Yep, definitely against all of the businesses that are giant privately owned concentrations of power. Uh-huh. Yep.
Kind of government-like power. I mean, if you have Wall Street banks collude to deny funding for, say, gun shop owners, well, that's an indirect attack on the Second Amendment. When you have different types of tech companies colluding with government to censor certain subjects, that's an attack on the First Amendment. So you got to understand that freedom's under attack, not just from government power. There's also concentration of private power, which does threaten a free society.
So far, so good, so presidential, and so many questions yet remaining. Of course, we have to follow up, Ron, on the aspect of my question that touched on the culture war, because freedom is a two-way street. And if we're going to grant freedom to people to express themselves culturally in the manner that is embodied by your success there in Florida, then what about the freedom of those opposed? But the next question that I'm going to ask Ron DeSantis...
Wait, you didn't let him answer that question. You just said a question and then you're moving on to the next question. Okay.
Would you pardon Trump on the charges around January 6th and the handling of classified documents? And if this man can speak so eloquently and appealingly, how is it that Trump is still soaring in the polls? To hear the answer to those questions, you are going to have to join us on Rumble. There's a link in the description right now. If you
I'm good. I'm good with the 15-minute the 15-minute thing here. How long is this actual? It's an hour and a half. We're not watching the full thing. We're not. Or wait, maybe it's not an hour and a half? No, it is. Okay, it's an hour, I guess. We're not watching that full thing. When did Russell Brand creep into the political sphere? This is kind of cringe. Russell Brand has been like kind of talking around the edges of the political sphere for a while. He and by a while I mean like several years now. His show has mainly been dedicated to conspiracy theory, new age medicine, and like occasionally chiming in on political issues. But this election cycle, he's like very solidly going conservative. He's always been a wacko conspiracy guy, but again, I think he's a perfect embodiment of how this conspiracy brain rots you to your core and turns you conservative. I'm sorry, is this nonsense or am I just not paying attention? Well, that's the thing, right? People like Russell like bombard you with nonsense that sounds, if you're not really paying attention, like maybe someone smart is saying it. But like if you're actually tuned into what he's talking about, like it's just ridiculous nonsense. It's meaningless drivel. And at best, by the way, meaningless drivel. At worst, it's meaningless drivel laced with like this carcinogenic conservatism. Libertarianism is just a gateway to fascist conservatism when you're not paying attention. True. Like Ben Carson with a siren voice. Yeah.